I'm very excited by this very special studio guest. It is the PFA Chief Executive, Maheta Molango, and you're going to be with me. I don't know if you know this, but you're with me for the next half an hour. I hope someone warned you. You got half an hour of me, which for me is magical. We'll ask you at the end whether it's magical for you. But welcome.
Thank you very much.
There's lots to get through. First of all, you've been in the job about 7 months now.
Yes.
Just to get an understanding of where you are, how have you settled in? How have you found it?
Very well. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's been now 7 months, as you said. Very interesting. I think I'm one of those who believe that it's always best to wait until you're inside of the building to know exactly what your opinion is about that very same building, because one thing is to be outside and see it from the outside, different things to be inside. And I think what I saw is the PFA that I knew about because I benefited from the PFA. Part of my studies were funded by the PFA, so a great organization which does a lot of good things. But clearly we had stuff to work on and to try to improve. And that's what we're working on, to try to ensure that we're aligned with what the members want.
Yeah, it must have been an interesting, I don't know if that's the right word, an interesting, because Gordon Taylor, of course, was in the role for over 40 years. So how tough is it coming in after someone who's been there for so long?
I think it's always important to separate the institution from the individuals. And as I said to you before, I think some of the publicity, negative publicity around the PFA over the last couple of years, I think does not justice to what the PFA is as an institution. I think I've had the chance to play in different countries and to work in different countries, and I can tell you that there's no other union with this ability to impact big decision, with the ability to provide, a pension scheme payment to the players, with the ability to really be at the right table to influence the game. And I think that's what I want to capitalize on. I want to make sure that we take the best of what the legacy offers us, and I think it's a lot. And then I think society evolves, I think the players evolve, mentality evolves, and I think what we need to do is make sure that the PFA is a reflection of what nowadays players want. And this has been a bit my focus, to really make sure that this cannot be a one-man show. This needs to be, I'm here to serve the players. So it is their organization, it's a member-centric organization, and hopefully I can provide to them my experience as a player, then as a lawyer, and then as a chief exec of a club, to try to basically convert their ideas into something tangible and actionable.
So that's fascinating. So are you saying that there was quite a big disconnect? Maybe you had a to-do list in your head when you came in. You sat there and went, actually, that's not my to-do list anymore. I've got this to do now. Did it change your conception of the PFA from the outside to when you actually got on to the inside?
Well, people asked me at the beginning, if I had a manifesto, and I said to people, I'm not a politician. It's not about what I think is right. It's about understanding what the players want me to do. And hence, what I decided to do is just go to dressing rooms. So what I did is this summer, I went to every single dressing room in the Premier League to just try to understand firsthand what they thought was a priority, what they thought was a source of concern, to really get a grasp for their vision about what they want the PFA to be there for. And it was fantastic. It was fantastic, and whereas I may have had certain kind of ideas before I went into this tour, all of a sudden I discovered that, for example, fixture congestion was, a priority for them across the board, irrespective of whether you are at a big club or a modest club. It was something that concerned them, because ultimately it's a player welfare issue, and it's also an issue of not being able to give my best version. Those guys are competitors; they want to give the best version of themselves, and they're seeing that is not totally possible under the current circumstances.
Yeah, player welfare and that fixture congestion, obviously it's been a huge talking point, not just through Christmas, but I'm guessing towards the end of the season, with a club, say, like Burnley, who've got loads of fixtures to make up, it'll be back on the agenda. But sometimes when people are right in the middle of things, they can't see the whole picture. How difficult is it for you to understand what the players are going for, but also trying to relay and come to terms with what the bigger fixture is, that there are other issues to be taken into account? It's kind of a balancing act, isn't it? Yeah,
I mean, the beauty of this is that I can sit down with a club chief exec knowing what he thinks, because I've been there 18 months ago. So I think your ability to put yourself into the shoes of the other gives you perspective that maybe helps trying to strike a balance. I think what the players are saying is, we care about our career, we care about football, the football as a product, and we think that we need to have a saying, that we need to have an input because we're knowledgeable, we care, we want to look after the product football, and it's not right that ultimately they don't have the chance to have this input, to have that seat at the table. That's what they're saying. So I think they're open to different ideas, but the question is, can they have a proper seat at the table, which acknowledges the fact that it's a generation of players. I was super impressed, when you talk to an Aspilicueta, you talk to a Jordan Henderson, you talk to a Harry Maguire. They're committed, they're smart, they're informed, they see the big picture. They don't just think about their own little kind of issue, but rather they see the big picture. And that's one of the things that I've been very encouraged about, to really see how much they care. How much they care and how much they see the big picture. And I think what we learned over the COVID period is, they led the line. So this perception of the player just being those, spoiled kids, being above the law, that's completely not what I've seen. To the opposite, it's really people who care, want to make a difference, who understand what the NHS does, who understand what the bigger issues of societies are. And we've seen how Marcus Rashford has contributed to that. We've seen how Jordan Henderson led the line with the NHS. And that's fantastic. It's fantastic for me to be able to represent this type of people, of individuals who see the big picture and they understand it goes beyond their individual interest.
Has that surprised you? Is there a sense that you're prouder than ever of your members having gone out and spoken to them then?
100%. I'm really proud and convinced that they are worth listening to. Because we recently had a very important meeting, as I'm sure you're aware, with Gianni Infantino and Arsene Wenger, who flew all the way from Zurich to meet us. And in that meeting, you could hear the opinion of very top players. You don't need to agree with them, but what they're saying makes sense, and is worth listening, and is worth debating, and is worth kind of taking into consideration, because I think football needs to be in the hand of people who know and care about the game. And I think there's not a better stakeholder to do that than the players.
Yeah, it's interesting because maybe it mirrors society in some ways, in that football is not alone. But if we go back a few decades, the footballers were supposed to just kick a ball on a Saturday, not have any opinion, not have any input, fulfill their contractual obligations and consider themselves lucky to do it. What you're saying is that actually now that has changed, and we should be listening much harder than perhaps we were.
I think football is a reflection of society, and I think when we say that the players want to have a voice, I could say the same with every employee. So my relationship to authority is completely different than the one that they have. So I worked for 10 years at a law firm. I never opened my mouth. Whatever my boss said was that, and that was it. And I never really challenged what the authority was saying or what the establishment was. It was just the way it was. But nowadays, it's not the case. But it's not just football. I'm sure you see that in your media outlet. You see that, at law firms. It's just the first question that the newcomer is what do you stand for? What are your values? First day, 22 years old, 23, they come out of university and they ask you, what do you stand for? And they want to be working in an organization that really reflect their values. Otherwise, they're happy to move away because they're no longer driven by money. They're driven by purpose, by being connected to values, by feeling that they are part of the decision-making process. And it doesn't mean that they need to make the final decision, but it means being part of a decision-making process. And I think this is what the players are saying. They're saying, treat us as adults. We have a valid opinion, we care, we're informed. Why would you not listen to what we have to say?
The problem was for you is you arrived slap bang in the middle of COVID, isn't it? There is no playbook. You're not taught about this on a UEFA course or whatever. How much harder did that make everything?
Well, I'm a great believer in culture, in creating a culture in your organization, and obviously not being able to meet people face to face makes it more difficult. I love to spend time with people face to face. I love to get a feel for what they think, and sometimes over Zoom it's difficult to achieve that. And that's why I really made a point, respecting the COVID regulation, to really go out there and meet them and see them and look them in the eyes and have a coffee with them, because that's how you get a flavor for your own people, which ultimately are the ones who will help you achieving what you want to achieve. Without our employees, the PFA will no one. But equally, you need to work externally to try to understand what the players want from you. And I've tried to spend some time, quality time, to try to be out there, understanding them and talking to them and looking them in the eyes.
Yeah, I guess vaccinations is one that people will consider, because you will have your personal views, but as you speak for the PFA, was it difficult to get the balance right there on a stance for the PFA as far as vaccinations were concerned, when you had perhaps the government urging players and everybody to have vaccinations? You had Jurgen Klopp, who expressed his opinions, didn't he? Yeah. And was quite vociferous, but yet you have to represent all your members. So how did you tread that line, and where did you end up?
It's a good question. I think ultimately, as a PFA, we're very clear on the fact that, we've gone through a very difficult time. We understand, respect and support the vaccination rollout. It is important that we do the right thing, and what we've tried to do is making sure that the players make the right decision based on science. So what we encourage them to do is listen to the experts. Listen to the experts, and then make your own judgment. But listen to the experts, and what we try to do, for example, is give them a chance to hear from Professor Van Tam. So we organize calls with the captains, both at Premier League level as well as EFL level, for them to be able to answer any question. Ask any question that you want, try to get the right answer, but get it from the right source. So the message is, go to the right source of information, listen to the experts, and then make up your mind. But I think our stance as PFA is very clear. We're supportive of the vaccination rollout, yet we understand that it's a personal choice, that people may have certain kind of concerns. And I think what we need to do is making sure that the experts respond to those concerns adequately, so that people are comfortable making the right decision.
Yeah, I guess it would have been a different debate if we were, say, in France, where now players can be banned from playing if they don't have the vaccinations. That would have made it much trickier, wouldn't it?
But that's what I'm trying to say. I think ultimately it's a personal choice. So it's for the players to make that choice as adults that they are. And by the way, the same applies to other industries, not just football. Again, I think I want to move away from this opportunistic kind of view sometimes, that to use the player when it suits people. I think players have led the line. So we shouldn't be forgetting that 18 months ago, when I was at home and probably you were at home, they were told, just go out there, play, you're going to be fine. Keep playing, you're going to be fine. And they went out there in a time where there was no clear indication about vaccination, no masks, no distancing, and they went there and played. And yes, there was self-interest as well, because of obviously playing means no impact to your own kind of salary condition, but they went out there and played. So I think when we talk about players, let's kind of talk about everything, the stuff that we need to work on and improve, but equally the stuff where they've demonstrated, a real resilience, a real wish to kind of help the cause. So I think there are people who really get it, the people who understand, society, understand what society needs. And I think what we need to do is help them, again, relying on the experts.
I was fascinating to hear you talk about Gianni Infantino and Arsene Wenger and the way that they came and spoke to club captains, was it, in England with the PFA. Tell me, what was that about? There's obviously been a lot of talk about a biennial World Cup. We were chatting previously about the pressure and fixture congestion on players. Was that all wrapped up in that, and what did you learn from that?
So basically, this came on the back of a letter that we as PFA had sent to FIFA, and specifically to Gianni Infantino, the president, about a month and a half ago. That letter was signed by all the captains of the Premier League as well as WSL, so it was both a male and female letter, which was very important for us. So it was both sides of the game, not just the male side. And I think the letter went well beyond the biannual World Cup. So it wasn't forcibly about that. It was about, we are hearing a lot of talks about calendar, about fixtures, about the future of football. England represent 1/3 of the players that played in the last World Cup, yet no one has called us. So we said, how can it be possibly possible? How can it be that England put 1/3 of the players that took part in the last World Cup, yet no one has considered the opinion of the players in this country? And the letter was, the players are first and foremost fans. They care about the game. They have an interesting opinion. They'd like to be listened. They deserve a seat at the table because they led the line in difficult times. And we said to the president of FIFA, would like you to take into consideration our voice, not just as part of a broader consultation process, but we want to have a seat at the table as we do at local level. So the PFA at local level negotiates key conditions with the Premier League, with the FA and with the EFL. We said would like to see the same happening at global level. So that was the purpose of the letter. This was responded promptly, I must say, by the president of FIFA, who suggested that maybe he could travel to England to meet us. And he came along with Arsene Wenger, who now has a very relevant role at FIFA, which I think it was welcomed by the players, because it showed that they gave an importance to what we do. And we met in person in Manchester. I was personally really impressed by the attendance, both in person as well as in remotely online. So we literally had all the captains from the Premier League as well as WSL present, either in person or online. And I think FIFA was impressed as well, because clearly you had players there who, you had world champions on both sides, who ultimately, if you look at it, you could say, well, they're millionaires. Why would they be attending a call when it doesn't forcibly bother them? Well, it does. They care, they're committed, they're there, they have an opinion, they want to voice it in a very respectful way, because that's the way we want to go about stuff. But I think it was fantastic to see all the way from top world champions to people who are in the middle of the relegation battle, who still took the time to come and express their views and try to have an impact on the game. So this has somehow reconfirmed to me the level of commitment that those guys have, irrespective of whether they are, top of the table or in the relegation battle or in the middle. They came, they care, they had an opinion, and hopefully this will be carefully listened by FIFA.
What is the PFA stance on it? Because we were touching on domestic fixture congestion. You're talking about the world calendar as well, which is something we have to include on the pressures on your members. So where do the PFA sit on that?
I think we're very clear on the fact that ultimately we as fans want to see the best possible football. The best possible football requires to see the best version of the players. And it's just physically impossible to play 70 games in a row, season after season, and being able to deliver the best. And then, I want my kids to see the best version of their heroes. And right now they're not, because what they see is a B, C, or D version, because it's just impossible. You cannot be playing in La Paz in Bolivia, 1,000 meters on a Thursday, and then being on Saturday playing, against Leeds or against Burnley or against Arsenal, and being expected to deliver. It's just impossible. And then on Tuesday you travel away and you play a Champions League game, and then on Saturday you're back here and you play a Carabao Cup game, and then it just doesn't work. And I think what the players have now seen is that some of the people they respect a lot and are very top pros are struggling. So there are examples now of players who cannot play 20 games in a season, but top professional, really look after themselves, and they cannot play 20 games because when you play 70, it just doesn't fly. And I think whereas the players acknowledge that they're very privileged, this is the game they love, it's an honor and a privilege to be a professional football player, yet the reality is that you depend on your physical condition to be able to deliver. So it's not any type of profession, it's that you need to be fit to deliver. It's just the way it is. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's a privilege to be a footballer. And I think that's what they understood, and they understood also, which I think is great for us, is there are certain issues that you cannot solve on your own. Irrespective of how many followers you have on Instagram or Twitter, irrespective of how much noise you make individually, we either come together and do it collectively, or this will never come to a good outcome.
Yeah, and you mentioned social media. You mentioned about the honour of playing for your country. But sadly, after the events of the Euros last summer, I think people would forgive Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, Jadon Sancho, if they thought, hang on a second, is it really worth playing for my country here after the terrible abuse that they received on social media following that? What are your thoughts on that? What does the PFA do to help and support people who are just trying to play football for their country?
Well, I think we got to a stage where the players are just, really disappointed that there's no action. And what we tried to do, that was back in August, we did publish a report which basically covered between 6 and 7 million posts for an entire season. So it's a pretty significant kind of sample to review. And that proved several things. First of all, that you can actually identify the people who are behind those comments. So the excuse of saying we cannot identify them is just not true. So if a union has been able to do that without being experts on that, then a social media platform can do it. Second, once you know who this person is, it's not just sufficient to block that person from that platform. You need to then be able to report that behavior to the police, and equally report that behavior to the club that is linked to that person, because what the research have shown is that typically you can link that behavior to a specific club, and hence you can ban that person from going to the stadium. So I think we hope that with that report, which was an important report for us, it showed that yes, you can take measure, that it shouldn't be on the victim to have the burden of pushing a button saying, I don't want to see those comments. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable that it is the victim who needs to choose what they want or she wants to see the comment or not. It should be just blocked, because we know that it's possible to do that. And hence, the debate needs to be, is there really a willingness to change things? And that's what we want to get an answer about.
I also wanted to get your thoughts on an incident we saw this week in the Africa Cup of Nations. Sadio Mane played on after a head clash, but then ended up having to be taken off with concussion. He did go to hospital. We hear he's recovering well, but there is concussion there. I wonder what you made of that situation.
I think we are very clear that player welfare always needs to prevail. It's difficult. I think it's one of those where you almost need to protect the players against themselves and protect the players against the interest of a manager who desperately wants to get him back on, of a club who wants to win a specific trophy, of a national team in that case. And I've been a player myself. I wanted to play on, but is it the best thing for me to do for my own welfare? And I think our role as a PFA is to tell them the truth, to see them seeing the big picture, and to make them understand that the player welfare is very important. And I think we're very clear that alternatives such as temporary subs, I think it is the right thing to do. So if you get a head injury, you have the chance to sit out in case of doubt, get assessed, and then only being allowed back in if the experts, I go back to the point of listening to the expert, if the expert think that you are able to come back. And this is irrespective of whether you end up scoring or not scoring. This is not relevant for us. For us, the player welfare is relevant.
Yeah, and we have obviously introduced concussion substitutes here. Those are being used just last week. How much of a step in the right direction is that, and how much more would you like to see introduced?
The PFA is absolutely in favour of the concussion subs, or temporary subs as we call them, because I think, as we said, in case of doubt, just sit out. And we know that's not forcibly what certain players would like in that point in time. And we are aware that education and awareness is still a big thing that needs to happen. And we want to continue pushing the various stakeholders to take this very seriously. And I think we need to incorporate as part of the mandatory discussion at the beginning of the season with the player this type of consideration. May it be on concussion, may it be more broadly on CTE or dementia. I think we need to do more in terms of education, we need to do more in terms of awareness. And we've seen how certain comments made by managers very recently point towards a direction that shows that we need to do more. And I think it is our role as the PFA to be that voice, to be that advocate, and hopefully push the clubs, the leagues to actually support that. And I think we are on the right direction, because we can see how this type of reasoning kind of resonates, I think, well with the clubs and with the leagues. So I've been encouraged by the discussion that I've had on this topic with the FA and with the Premier League and the EFL.
Yeah. So how, you mentioned dementia there, how high on your agenda is dealing with head injuries, football, and the players suffering with dementias after their careers have ended?
It is clearly a priority for us. I think I was saying to you before how I felt that the PFA was a great institution, yet I think it is clear, after having discussed with a number of families, that the families felt let down by the PFA. And this is a reality, and I think we need to accept it. We may agree or disagree on the merits of why they felt let down, but the reality is that that's a feeling that they have. And hence, I made it a priority, alongside the chair of the PFA, of the Players Board, John Machino, to go and meet those families, to hear from them, to have those difficult talks, because I can tell you those were not forcibly easy talks, because people are frustrated, people are disappointed, and I think it is our role to first listen, to learn, and to try to understand from them how we can improve. And I think that's what we're working on. And in fact, I'm pleased to tell you that we will be coming out shortly with a proper, because we already have an internal kind of task force working on that, with the help of Dawn Astle and Rachel Walden, which has been, I think, a game changer for us, because since December last year, we we made a point of hearing from the family in terms of how can we do a better job. So that was phase one. But now I think phase two is to have a proper bespoke CT or dementia strategy at the PFA that we're working on right now, and hopefully we can announce within the next few days or weeks.
Yeah, so it is an issue that's plagued the PFA in the past. And you're hoping this will achieve what you hope it will achieve then?
I think, you know, it's a very difficult topic. I think it's a topic which, you know, does not have a solution overnight. I think it's one where you need to show that level of commitment. You need to show the willingness to change things and to go in the right direction, and that's what we're committed to do. But I think it takes a collective effort. So I think our view is we need to get our own house in order and making sure that we are a credible, you know, voice for the families. But then everyone needs to be responsible here, because let's be clear on the fact that the players have not played for the PFA. The players have not played for any specific person of the PFA. The players have played for clubs and for leagues and for the FA, because they also represent them at the international level, and hence every single stakeholder, may it be the Premier League, may it be the FA, may it be the EFL and the LMA, I think need to be conscious of their respective responsibilities. We'll start first with ours, but then I think we all need to be conscious that this is a collective matter which requires a collective response.
Just to finish with, I heard you say right at the very beginning, in fact, that the PFA had helped you. They funded you with your course or part funded that. And there is so much work that the PFA does that perhaps even players don't know about. I'm thinking about the work that the likes of Jeff Whitley does and the Sporting Chance Clinic, that sort of area, and there's other areas as well. How important is it for you that you get that message across, that people know that your members, but also maybe the public as well, because it's sometimes easy to knock things if you haven't done your research.
Yeah.
How important is it for you to get that message across?
I think it's crucial. I think I'll give you two pieces of information I think are relevant. First of all, a union typically represents active professionals. So you are now a journalist. The day that you stop being a journalist and you become, you know, a lawyer, you stop being part of the union of journalists. Yeah. You will not be able to continue claiming stuff from that union now that you're a lawyer. Well, at the PFA, if you've been a professional 1 minute, you will forever be able to access the benefits of the PFA. May it be mental well-being, may it be education, may it be a number of things. So that's point number one. So the PFA is a very special union because it covers not just active professional, but 50,000 former members. So that's point number one. Point number two, we cover 55,000 people who have 65 employees. So the ratio is for every one employee at the PFA, we cover 845 or 50 players. So I think we need to work on resources. We need to be able to provide that coverage, because otherwise it's impossible. That's my second point. The third point is, I think we need to make sure that we explain that a lot of time we take things for granted. And I've played in Spain, there's no standard contract. I've played in Spain, there's not a union that pays into a pension scheme £6,000 a year without you contributing as a player to that into a pension scheme for you. You know, there's not a union that gives you the opportunity to get accident grant funds, educational fund, coaching opportunities. So I think, as I said to you, yes, we need to improve on certain stuff, and I think we need to hold our hand up and say, let's try to improve and get better. Yet at the same time, let's acknowledge the fact that we do a lot of good. I think we are here when people need us, but we need to continue being self-critical and listen to what we can improve in terms of what the players need from us.
I'm so chuffed. You think I could go on to be a lawyer? That's made my day. Absolutely wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for coming in.